And I won't tell you that it was corduroy like those back in the 80s. You know, oh, yeah. You know that look? Hey, Kyle, can you hear me? I'm annoying people here, too.
Sorry about that.
What?
Sorry for the box.
Who box?
I hit you with the box.
Oh, I was just doing thinking. Hello, Kyle, can you hear me? I'm annoying people here. Can you get audio back there? Hello, hello. So we're not up yet, right? You're already streaming? Yeah, it ain't hard. No one's here. I know we're close to something. Yeah, no one's here other than you. You want me to call you back when it starts, when you start getting in here? Okay. Okay, yeah, I just want to. They're not there, the people that are on around. Hey, I'm with Cameron and Rebecca. I'm just it's Renee. We're at this spring action and little children out. I think they're actually going to go after those that we have this relationship, so we might be here. I called Trump.
All right, anybody needs any audio or any white balance? Are you good? Okay. Okay, he's here. He just had to forgot something in his car, so he went back, but he's here. No, his notes are so in his head. It's amazing to work with somebody that doesn't need notes. You know, like, oh, I have a draft for you. I'm good. Okay. You make
We don't
notes?
have reporters that can do that anymore.
No?
Hey.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey.
What do you need? What do you need? What can I do for you, Andrew? Did you sign?
You better get over that.
You know what? You guys probably should have been Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for, first of all, I know you all sent requests to talk about this, and we just had to really get prepared to be able to give you the right information. So Dr. Trujillo is going to be giving you his statement, and then he'll open it up for questions. So thank you.
Well, certainly, is everybody okay on the sound? Can we hear? Okay. Well, I certainly want to welcome everybody this morning. I know this has certainly been a hot topic. And I also know that there's probably a lot of questions about the funding freeze. I'm also prepared to answer those questions. So with regard to immigration enforcement guidance that we have now given to principals and that we've communicated to our governing board, in the face of increased and more aggressive immigration enforcement actions by the federal law enforcement entity known as ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, I want to communicate the following points. Number one, the school's legal obligations under the auspices of the 1982 Supreme Court case Plyer versus Doe remain unchanged. And that landmark case from 1982 establishes every child's right to attend public school regardless of immigration status. It prohibits schools and districts from collecting and using immigration material or immigration documentation or status to make enrollment decisions or to provide educational services to students. That is still the law of the land. Our school officials, whether they be site officials like principals, administrators, or teachers, or district office leaders, we are prohibited from requiring parents to submit immigration information and documentation, or requiring it at the point of registration and enrollment, or using it to determine the scope of educational services that we provide to students. Not only is that the law, we also have Governing Board Policy ACB, which is a non-discrimination against immigrant student policy, which prohibits our students and staff from making any comments, personal or otherwise, or conjectures about a student or a parent's immigration status. And it also prevents, of course, in accordance with the law, any of our schools, our administrators, or any district personnel from compelling any student or any parent to submit any kind of immigration documentation to the district for the purposes of determining the scope of educational services or resources that would be provided to students and families. So we stand firmly behind the belief that the traditional public school is and always will be a safe place for children and young people, regardless of immigration status. The journey of literacy that our students begin at kindergarten and numeracy, and the love of books and the love of math, that is our mission, not immigration enforcement. With regard to contact with law enforcement officials, our approach to contact with law enforcement officials has not changed. Whether we're dealing with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, known as ICE, or the Tucson Police Department, or the Sheriff's Department, or any other federal or local law enforcement entity, those law enforcement officials have to have a judicial warrant, a valid judicial warrant, and have to show the appropriate identification to be able to enter our campuses. We have the expectation that law enforcement officials will be conducting themselves lawfully in order to be able to enter our campuses. We will not be, and we feel that we are acting within federal law, state law, and certainly within governing board policy. We will not be granting access to law enforcement officials to our campuses without the appropriate identification and a valid judicial warrant. We feel like that is acting within the law, and just like we will be holding our employees accountable for acting within the law and that we will be conducting ourselves lawfully, we also have the same expectation of federal immigration enforcement officials that may be coming onto our campuses. At no point do we want our employees in a position where they are breaking the law or that there is a perception that they are breaking the law. Everything that I'm communicating today is the law of the land. Our obligation to educate students, regardless of immigration status, and our requirement that law enforcement officials serve us with a judicial warrant that we have a right to make copies of, as well as their respective badges and identification and credentials that we also have a right to document before they come onto our campuses. With that being said, we also understand that there may be situations where law enforcement officials do actually present the appropriate judicial warrant and they actually do present the appropriate credentials. We will be complying in those situations, but then we will also be admonishing those law enforcement officials to enact their duties in the most humane and sensitive way possible to the remainder of the students on the campus, the respective student body, and the faculty. Taking a student into custody is a traumatic event, not only for the student, but for the family and for all the other students that might be watching. So this morning we communicated protocols that if such a situation were to take place on our campus, we would respectfully ask the law enforcement officials to wait in a private area, like a front office or a lounge area, while we, the people that love and care for the students most, retain the student and bring the student up to that front office. It would be our goal in that kind of a situation to minimize the disruption and the interruption to the campus climate and the instructional operations of the instructional day. So that's the overall gist of the guidance that we've given to principals with regard to law enforcement contacts, law enforcement officials that might be approaching our schools. I also want to cover information, student information, directory information, contact information. Contact may also occur not through an officer's physical appearance at the school, but we may also see a request for directory information coming from federal immigration officials, asking for addresses or phone numbers or confidential information. Our same expectation holds that in order to gain access to that information, we expect to see a judicial warrant. We expect to see identification before we are surrendering any kind of sensitive student or family information related to students that are registered and enrolled in TUSD schools. With that, I will take any questions, and then I think we'll tackle the funding freeze questions after we kind of close out the immigration.
How worried are you that, even though what you just laid out is what's required for them to take a child into custody, if they don't have that warrant and they just come in, what can you do, if anything?
Well, what we will do, we will not be asking our employees to stand in the way of law enforcement officials who are aggressively and assertively carrying out their duties. But in that situation, while we are asking our employees to take a step back and not impede law enforcement officials from their entry to the campus if they do not heed our notification to them that they don't have the appropriate credentials to be there, we will be documenting the situation and we will be taking it up in court.
Follow up on that one. Who makes that final decision that you will not pass out private information of the students? Because I ask, because the president has made remarks that law enforcement who doesn't enforce the immigration stuff could be arrested. Is it possible whoever decides that we are not releasing could be held in contempt and could be arrested for not providing that information? Are you worried about that?
The chances of that happening are extremely remote because it is federal law that law enforcement officials have to present a judicial warrant as part of any investigation where they're seeking to take a person of interest or a suspect into custody. That is a requirement. So we are acting within that law to say where is the judicial warrant in order for us to give you this information. We are very, very confident from the guidance that we've received from both our in-house counsel and outside counsel as well, that that's just basic law, that law enforcement officials do have to have a judicial warrant to be able to gain access to that kind of information. Now, if they do have a judicial warrant and then we refuse, then yes, I would be extremely concerned for any employee withholding that information in the face of that documentation.
Who would be the final say to not be released?
We're talking about the campus, so the campus authority rests with the campus principal. Now, the campus principal will consult us, the campus principal will call us, the campus principal will certainly give an opportunity for all of us to weigh in, but ultimately it's going to be the campus principal. And certainly in escalated cases, it might even be my office, okay? So the situation would determine who would be the final call.
How stressful is this as a superintendent of all these students that this could possibly happen?
It's very stressful. It's very disruptive. It's causing unnecessary anxiety and fear amongst a lot of our parents and a lot of our families. And unfortunately, we're worried about the impact not just on students, mental and overall socio-emotional health, but also their ability to focus in the classroom and come in every day ready to read and ready to engage and ready to focus on their academics. It's kind of hard when all of this is going on, especially for students that have to walk to school, students who are concerned about being at bus stops, and students who are concerned about walking through their neighborhoods.
That is actually what I was going to
Yeah.
ask about. Obviously, a lot of the things that you've been talking about are, whether a student's like in class or something like that. If, let's say a parent is bringing their kid and they're on campus, not yet inside, but, on campus, drop their kid off. Do you feel like you all have any say in requesting for that warrant, or at that point, do law enforcement?
But once a child or young person steps foot onto our property, even if it's just 1 foot into the parking lot, they're in our jurisdiction. We can ask for a warrant. We are extremely limited, if not beyond our scope, to be able to assist with such situations going on outside in the community, whether it's a park or, out in the supermarket. And unfortunately, our jurisdiction does not extend beyond our property.
Do you know if any families have not been sending their students to school for fear of immigration enforcement?
We don't know at this point. It's kind of hard to make any kind of assessment. We certainly look at daily enrollment reports, but then, all you see is absenteeism. That absenteeism could be the flu, it could be COVID, it could be a lot of reasons. But we haven't done any sort of detailed surveying to find out, the reasons for the absences.
And have you had any communication with federal law enforcement on this topic?
We have, through the county superintendent's office, who has been able to establish at least a basic line of communication with leadership in immigrations and customs enforcement for the Tucson region, that at this moment, schools aren't necessarily a focus. So the key is at this time. Okay, so that's the only information that we've received, but I think it's a good thing. I want to commend County Superintendent Dustin Williams for at least trying to open up a line of communication with immigrations and custom enforcement leadership for this sector.
With the local law enforcement, Tucson Police and the King County Sheriff's Department, have you had any communication with them, concerns with the federals coming in, what they can do, if any kind of conversation with them, worried about this situation?
Well, I think Chief Kasmar has been very, very clear in his communications with the media and also in the statement that was released by his office just a few days ago, that immigration enforcement is not the role of local law enforcement officials. So not only will they not be investigating immigration-related concerns, they're also not going to be able to stand in the way of any federal immigration enforcement actions that may be going on in the city or the county.
What steps, if any, is the district taking to kind of continue to build trust with those immigrant families who may have that fear of sending their kids to school?
Well, we've put together a resource list that we're going to be making available at all of our family and community engagement centers. We have 5 family resource centers. We're in one of them, Duffy Family Resource Center. We have another one out at Palo Verde. We have one over at Menlo Park. We have another one way out in the Southwest Center, which is more out by Casino del Sol. And our family resource centers are designed to be places for families to come in, get information, get access to resources, whether it's the clothing banks that are at all of them or the food bank. Part of the resources that they offer are community assistance for these types of issues. So those will be our hubs. We expect them to be very, very busy in providing our families information for legal resources if they need it, information on nonprofit organizations that might be able to assist them.
Some schools might be, I don't want to say more targeted, John B. Wright comes to mind, it's very diverse, a lot of immigrants,
You know, we're at this point, because we're a very, very diverse district, and we have students in 86 campuses, 40,000 students. We're really working with all of our schools and making sure that they have the same information, whether it's John B. Wright or it's Fruchtendler or it's Safford or Tucson High itself. So we're really trying to make sure that all of this guidance is given to our principals at the same time.
Yeah, someone might have already asked this on the way to the party, but what does training for faculty and staff look like in terms of the law enforcement and school?
Well, we had training this morning for our principals. We'll be training our office managers and our office assistants later this week, because a lot of times they're the front line. So we want to train them in terms of what to look for a valid judicial warrant, what are the characteristics of a warrant, what are the different badges and forms of identification they would expect to see. So we're going to get a little bit more detailed with them, as well as the overall guidance that we've shared with our principals.
Will you make photocopies of that kind of stuff for each school so that they actually have a physical copy and see, compare?
I don't know about photocopies, but certainly it is part of our training to kind of show, you know, what to look for in.
That's a lot of information to try to store.
It
in
is,
your head
yeah.
when crisis is going on and fears going
Yeah,
on.
it is, yeah.
So I'm just trying to think, is there enough resources for that frontline people to go, wait, can I see your badge? I need to see.
Sure, yeah, I'm sure we'll make those resources available, but right,
They will receive them all digitally
Yeah.
as well. They already started to receive all those guidelines and then the talking points and, you know,
yeah.
the resources available. They all have the digital copies for them to be able to access them.
Any other questions on immigration-related items? Okay. And I'll go into now the funding freeze, because I know that that's probably the second hot topic that just came out yesterday. So right now, there is no impact for us, at least until February 3rd, I believe, where we'll find out more information. But yesterday, the Office of OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, they did release a memorandum that effectively paused funding for all federal grants, essentially until further notice, until the administration has time to assess the expenditures and the different types of programs that these federal grants are funding for everything from nonprofits to public institutions like schools, like hospitals. We're obviously schools, right? So late yesterday, a federal judge granted a delay. So right now we're good. We're going to know more information after the hearing that has been set for Monday, whether or not the administration has the authority to intervene and block funding that's already been appropriated by Congress to the schools. In terms of what it looks like for TUSD, okay, we have about $43.7 million in federal funds. We have about $26 million is our largest pot, which is Title I. Title I is definitely the largest pot that we have. We have about $12 million that we receive for services to students with disabilities, okay, through the Individuals with Educational Disabilities Act grant. We do receive that, almost $12 million. We also have, between Title II and Title IV, about $5 million that's also on the table there. And then we also have about $800,000 in Title III funding. So all in all, there's about $43.5 million on the table. And we'll get more information Monday in terms of what the fate of these federal grants is, if we will continue to draw them down from ADE. You know, the basics of each one. Title I, those are supplemental services and resources for students that meet the federal guidelines for poverty. We most prominently use Title I funds for like summer school to offer summer programming for students. We also use them to pay for additional teachers' assistants in the classrooms, academic interventions, extra resources for core academic areas, extra books, extra readers, access to reading specialists. So there's a lot in the academic intervention realm that we're able to fund through Title I. Title II is all of the teacher professional development and training that teachers need to be effective ranging from literacy instruction, teaching the science of reading, teaching math, best practices. We spend a lot of money in teacher professional development, teacher trainings, teacher coaches. We have a lot of positions that are funded out of Title II, most prominently our curriculum service providers. Those are master teacher coaches that work with struggling teachers and work with teachers on inside of our campuses. They'll do model lessons. They'll partner with teachers, teach them how to design lessons, mentor them with classroom management. It's a very, very important role. So Title II is it's a pretty big pot for us. Title IV deals a lot with the anti-bullying programming that we have in the district, and our efforts at, I don't want to say SEL because I call it character education. I know for whatever reason, socio-emotional learning has become somewhat of a flashpoint. It's just character education. And character education ranging from peer pressure resistance to positive self-image to personal organizational skills to time management to conflict mediation to impulse control, basic stuff. You know, when we're talking about character development, I know that a lot of our anti-bullying program does come out of Title IV. And then I mentioned IDEA. That's probably the one I'm extremely worried about because those are our most vulnerable students in terms of students in a lot of cases with severe disabilities, instances of severe both cognitive and physical impairments. Out of IDEA, we pay for a lot of our services for exceptional education, modified transportation. We pay a lot of our service providers that are doing physical therapy, speech, language. We pay for a lot of those services coming out of IDEA. So the infrastructure that supports students with disabilities, a lot of that is funded out of IDEA. And with that, we'll take your questions on this situation.
With that,
Yeah.
if that were to disappear, let's just go with the worst scenario.
Yeah.
What does that mean impact to your students and to your teachers?
Well, the challenge with this situation is if that funding were to simply disappear, we would certainly have to huddle with our team and work with the governing board for both a short-term and a long-term solution. You know, short-term solution, we would have to see how much money's in the budget to keep the programs running. Don't know how long. And then we would have to have a long-term solution in terms of will we even be able to keep these programs alive without the federal funding source? And then if we are, how are you going to do it? What kind of adjustments are you going to make in the budget? That would be our 5 elected officials who would be on the dais making those decisions. And I'm not sure we would have anywhere near the budget capacity to soak up $43 million. Because the challenge with this situation is if this were to actually come to pass, and we have no indication that it will because we have the hearing, we're going to see the hearing. The challenge with this situation would be it's not a portion of, say, Title I that would be disappearing. It's not a percentage. It would be all of it. So there is no, well, we could keep summer school open for 10 days instead of 20 because it's a reduction. No, if it's an elimination and you're not getting it anymore, there's just simply no summer school unless you can find another way to fund it. Okay, so that's the difficulty of the situation if it actually does come to pass.
So
Do you
it
feel
was
like-
actually, the funding freeze was just rescinded less than 30 minutes ago by the Trump administration. But, now that this has already happened once, this is obviously brand new, but would you be willing to, put any measures in place to protect these different areas in case this happens again?
Unfortunately, because these are federal funding sources, we have zero ability to put any kind of protective measures fiscally, first and foremost, into effect. We have more control over local funding sources that are a part of our budget. Federal funding sources always come through ADE, and they're drawn down as we make our expenditures and we get reimbursed through these grants. So we're going to be looking to ADE most prominently for those types of measures. ADE has been very, very supportive. Yeah, they have. They've been, I think they're doing the best that they can. I know they were inundated with phone calls yesterday. They've been very responsive to us. And I think their stance, just prior to what I heard from our colleague here, was that let's wait until Monday and we'll give you further guidance. But now that we're hearing that's been rescinded, I guess, safe for now. Okay.
Do you feel like this is just another attack on public education? I mean, over the years I've been in
Yeah.
the business, I've seen funding drop, seen funding being moved over. You just feel, as a superintendent, do you feel this is just another attack and like, decreasing what public schools should be doing?
It's an attack. It's a negative assumption that there's some sort of an ulterior motive that public schools are up to. There's some sort of an agenda that needs to be discovered. Look, we're in the business of teaching and learning. We're in the business of literacy and numeracy and getting kids to fall in love with academics. And why wouldn't you want to give us more resources to do that? And so these types of decisions have the feel like there's an assumption that we need to be investigated, we're doing something wrong. And all it's done in the last 24 hours is just kind of create a lot of chaos and uncertainty. I feel really, really bad for our employees that are funded out of these funding sources. It's probably for them been a very stressful 24 hours. Am I going to have a job? What am I going to be able to do? What if Title I goes away? What if the IDEA budget goes away? Will I be able to manage my caseload? I have a certain amount of students with IEPs and disabilities. Will I be able to go to work? So I try to think about it from the perspective of our employees, and they're hearing, and for them to hear this kind of stuff on the radio or on their phone before they hear it from us also puts us in a, like this type of information shouldn't be coming from the administration, and our employees are hearing it for the first time, and then they're approaching us for answers, and we don't have any answers because we haven't heard it yet. And so it's been very, very chaotic these last 24 hours. I hope that in the future, if these types of decisions are going to be made, they're done in a more coordinated and organized fashion. Oh, I couldn't give you a number off the top of our head. I'd have to get a list. Yeah.
Anybody else? Good?
I've had some readers ask specifically about the free lunch program. I know you already discussed funds come from several government agencies.
Yeah, so we are, as part of the National School Lunch Program, we've met the requirements to be what's called a community eligibility provision, which means that the predominant percentage of students in the entire district now meet the federal guidelines for poverty. So it means every school now eats for free, and we receive reimbursements through a federal grant, National School Lunch Program. We receive reimbursements based off of the amount of students that are actually eating in the cafeteria, and those reimbursements cover the salaries for our kitchen staff, our food services team, all of our staffing in the cafeterias, and of course all of our capital equipment like the ovens and the dishwashers and all of the equipment that we have in our kitchens. So that would be chaotic if that went away as well, yeah. I didn't see National School Lunch on the list. I think it's more the entitlement grants that are received up through ADE, yeah.
Any other questions on immigration so we can move forward? Since the other one's not happening anymore? Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, that started right after the press conference.
Oh, good.
Started.
Oh, that they rescinded?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Do
Do you want to go to
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
to the room over there? And you, all right.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
All right. So,
Forgot it's taped down. What's going on? Taped it. I didn't do this. Someone did. Oh my god. Okay. Oh my god. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Shutting down my question. I know.
but we don't print for We're saving paper. We're not sending paper. Does anybody else need it?
Yeah, I get 10. All good. It's so good to see you.
Hey, you're welcome anytime. Yeah, got it? Yeah, and that's Mary, right?
That is Mary.
What?
Huh?
She missed it. So it's fine.
That's okay. I missed
Renee
mine.
missed it. I called you another name.
It happens. Oh, only today?